Live streaming?
Yes, I am, but I'm not announcing it publicly because I don't want an excuse to like not be here. And also I'm trying to set up like a camera angle, but yeah, I think I got it. Yeah, yeah. You've been here before, right? No, first time. Oh, I really like it. Yeah, it's really nice bookstore. It is.
I describe it as perfectly curated.
Yes, it is. Very. Yeah. And then earlier in the summer, they did like a little an exhibit for this book. And also another person in the display that did the modeling for like some of the poses in this book also looks like Mauricio and you, but he's shirtless. So, and I remember correctly, that person was kind of hairy to my chest. I don't know if you are, so yeah, yeah.
Nobody wants to see that.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm so glad like that.
Oh, no, Nikolai, this is a promise.
I mean, I'm not 100 on my standard.
Yeah, we met at the library for Mike's workshop back in June.
Okay, don't laugh at me. You know.
And I really thought for a second that it was Mauricio. Yeah, I also just thought right now, like, this is Mauricio. Yeah.
Whatever, you know. Yeah. I was like, yeah. Yes. That I forgot, like, oh, I don't know how to roll my arms. Whatever. I'm like, here's the card. Look, this.
When I first joined you guys at Speak Out before that was I know he was struggling, you know.
Yeah.
He's
He even has a
Hey, how's it going?
Yes.
I just got rejection. The X mag. Yeah. Anyways, I ripped off the
I don't either.
I did.
I haven't worn yet.
Lily's going to start lift back. Oh yes, actually. So I mentioned that I'm interested in you and 10 minutes, but would you want to be okay with me first? Okay, okay. All right. So me and Ryan are gonna talk a little bit, and then we're gonna start this.
So now, I didn't know about having this coming down here.
I live in Anaheim too.
Right? I know.
Yeah.
Second, is that what I'm hearing? Don't learn.
Nobody knows that.
That's a good point.
I always do that.
So impressionable.
Yeah. I always do that. Theater, it's like, nobody knows it.
An excerpt from two of the stories that I have that were always put out by my Toastmasters group. The story masters.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. Next month. They did. Thursday. They give you like guidelines, right?
Just the launch.
Yeah, no, yeah. You should also want to see like
Just to get he asked me to read this book. He said I had to read it. Yeah, this has it's like the 2K.
We're actually going to last Labor Day at the
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm the last. Yeah, it's nice. I'll have more of it.
Yeah, you don't have this. You can't make it here. Yeah, that's pretty cool that she, I'm thankful that she requested today. I'm happy to find this small space. Who's ever doing for PR, man? She's rogue and yeah. Like times I'm really like soul subjects from the other times they don't call it you. There you go.
That's why I'm so ready to go out. I haven't never happened. You were going to like,
So am I. Okay. Yeah, oh, or you can put it out while I. Okay.
That's me. That's me.
Oh, no, you guys are good.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
We have to buy a grant for you to the air conditioner.
Yeah.
See you. I've seen you too. Okay, I'm over there.
But you do have.
They're just not working right, like it almost blows hot air.
We don't want that.
And there's some up there too.
Okay. Hey there, YouTube. I'm gonna go look for what I'm gonna read real quick.
There's another fan right here.
I gotta look at my email because I can't grab my book. Hey, Sarah, thank you. Whatever. Not whatever, more like. I gotta read it.
Maurice? Yeah.
All right, so welcome to the second Thursday of September here at Page Has a Machine. For this month, it's Trenches Full of Prose. Next month, if you're here again for the second Thursday, it will be Trenches Full of Poets. And that one includes an open mic, so you should come back for that if you want to read a poem of your own, or maybe somebody else's poem that you love from a poet that you love. I'm Jesse Tovar, and this is Brian Dunlap from Los Angeles Literature. Thank you all again for all coming. The reason I started Trenches Full of Prose is because I love Trenches Full of Poets, which is run by Nicola Garcia, who's in the back, and Mauricio Moreno. And they do an amazing job curating, amazing poets all over SoCal month after month. And I kind of want to do the same thing too with the Prose people. That's why I've been doing it now for at least 3 times now, and it's been fun. It's been great. So today, normally I don't do this because I hosted so many events, and I normally don't start off with anything of mine, but I'm gonna just go ahead and do that today. Yeah. So I'm gonna read here something I read for the Living Room, a reading series back in February of 2022 in San Francisco. That actually did get published by Jam Magazine, where I went for my BA like back in 2016 to 2018. And this is in the 2022 issue, and the title of this short story is called A Rebirth in Professional Relationships. So I'm gonna just go ahead and read it. Months ago, Effie, with actual tears in his eyes, wished why he can't find peace in being in the same space as his old professor from community college. You might be wondering the same thing. For an attempt at brevity, here's a backstory. When Effie took Daniel Jose Ruiz for an online graphic fiction class, he felt really intimidated whenever he spoke to Professor Ruiz during office hours about his inquiries regarding the class. What didn't help with Effie's nerves was that he earned a C on the first essay. Ruiz did warn his students on his class syllabus that he's not an easy A, yet easy like Sunday morning. Once midterms arrived, Effie misread the instructions and thought he only had 2 hours to write 6 questions, with each question being 2 paragraphs long. After Effie turned in his midterm, he realized he was supposed to carve out 2 hours to complete the midterm, meaning he could have spent more than 2 hours if he wanted to. When midterms were returned, Effie was surprised he earned a B. After another B on his second essay, Effie finally earned an A on the final essay. A week after Effie turned in his 9-question, 2 paragraphs each final, Effie saw he earned a B in graphic fiction. After Effie left community college as a transfer student to major in English at a university, all the English courses he took felt like a breeze in comparison to an English class taught by Daniel Jose Ruiz. By the way, real quick, if you were here back in June, Daniel Jose Ruiz was one of the readers from the first Trenches Full of Prose, so that's what I'm referring to here. Anyways, around that time, Effie was in the bachelor's program. Ruiz reads his first book, Coconut Verses. On the day Ruiz read live at a Hollywood bookstore, Effie mustered up courage to head to Ruiz's reading, but Effie backed out once he arrived in Hollywood and got drunk at the well instead. After Effie earned his BA and went through his master's program in rhetoric and literature, it was only then those seminars felt as equal as a Daniel Jose Ruiz class, minus the 6 to 9 questions to answer in at least 2 paragraphs. Days after Effie earned his master's degree, and months after becoming a host for author readings at a coffee roaster shop, Effie mustered up courage to reach out to Daniel Jose Ruiz. Ruiz released his second novel, The Life of Jean Sierra, which is actually here on the bookshelves here in PJS Machine, by the way. Effie wanted Ruiz to read at the roaster's brick and mortar and was shocked when Ruiz agreed. Once the day of Ruiz's author reading arrived, Effie was frantically looking for another author to oversee the event, since Marcelo Hernandez Castillo was also booked by him to introduce Daniel Jose Ruiz. Effie was scared to be in the same room as Ruiz. Effie was still intimidated by Ruiz, even more so now that Ruiz is a selling novelist. No one came through for Effie. Effie drank a mix of espresso beans and whiskey. That still didn't calm him down. Effie sequestered himself in another room before the event started. Effie's first time being in the same space as Daniel Jose Ruiz after about 5 years was when the event officially started. Effie was shaky on stage, even though his face mask hid his full nervous face, and was stuttering his words welcoming Castillo to the stage. Effie stood behind Marcelo Hernandez Castillo when Castillo gave his brief introduction to Ruiz. When Daniel walked to the stage, he hugged Effie. It was at that moment where a rebirth in a professional relationship took place. After the event, Effie was very comfortable being around Daniel and Marcelo. They took pictures. Effie appeared as having the time of his life in pictures. Effie brought unity in bringing together an author whose memoir appeared as a prop in Sex and the City, and author who was his teacher. That's not an everyday thing. Months later, Effie booked Daniel Jose Ruiz to read at another restaurant where Scott and Crayley introduced Ruiz. Effie also arranged for Ruiz to appear in the Chills at Will podcast. Chills at Will and Nurse Goes Press then booked Ruiz to read at an author showcase. Who knows where Effie will take Daniel Jose Ruiz and other authors next? So that's in Jam magazine. Thank you so much. Right now, I'm gonna go ahead and look through the bios here so I can introduce our very first reader for this evening. So give me just one moment here. You guys can talk amongst yourselves, shake each other's hand maybe. Yeah, or wait. Oh yeah, that will work. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah. Again, he writes a lot of posts about like what's happening during the week for a bunch of like prose and author, prose and poetry readings. He'll write like literary history. There's guest authors that now write like also the similar things and a Q&A series. In fact, there's another Q&A series that has been started by Nicolai Garcia in Los Angeles Literature called Not a Podcast. And the first interview is tarot card poet Ingrid Calderon Collins. So if you guys get a chance to look at losangelesliterature.com, you will find that interview and other posts that cover the Los Angeles area literature scene, even and beyond, like in Orange County and whatnot. So our first reader for the evening is going to be Ashton Cynthia Clarke. Ashton Cynthia Clarke began storytelling in 2019 and has appeared in live venues throughout the Los Angeles area, New York City, and virtually. She loves to write both prose and poetry and has published in the local journal Spectrum. Clarke developed an animated short based on her telling of a family member's life in Jamaica, Teta and the Mango. Earlier this year, she was interviewed on Story Masters, an online advanced Toastmasters club dedicated to the art of storytelling. Originally from New York, Ashton now resides in the foothills of a national forest in the Los Angeles area, where she was not surprised to discover a bear in her swimming pool one sweltering summer afternoon. Oh God! I mean, I'm so glad. I mean, well, I live in Monrovia, and I know a lot of residents there go through the same thing. But because the closest I've seen with wildlife encounters when I would hike or like hand over like flyers or whatever over the years, is like seeing deer walk on city streets, and it's nerve-wracking, but yet like
It's not a bear.
I know, and it's not a bear, but at the same time, but seeing a deer, it's amazing because like, oh, how cute, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, seriously. But anyways, please welcome Ashton Cynthia Clarke.
Oh my gosh, look at all the people. Thank you for hosting us again, Chris. Thank you, Jesse, for having me today. I am going to read tantalizing excerpts from a couple of pieces in this book, The Storytelling Bistro, Stories, Poems, and Reflections. This is an anthology that was put out by my Toastmasters group. We go by the name Story Masters. And it was the very first time that I was invited to put something in a publication. So I chose a couple of my favorite stories that I had delivered orally. This first excerpt is from a story that I call 100 to a Box Size Large. Back in 2013, I'm living in LA, and my brother calls and says that my father had been diagnosed with cancer. My father and most of my relatives all live in New York City. And I was just coming off the heels of a separation from my husband, and I decided to go to New York City and help with my dad. So, again, an excerpt from 100 to a Box Size Large. When I moved to New York from Los Angeles 3 months before, all of us were expecting a full recovery. But in that time, my father's cancer had dug in and taken over. Rogue cells replicating crazily in a sick imitation of his liver and then lungs. Daddy's decision to end treatment seemed rooted in logic and practicality. I hated that. He had even chuckled a little while back on his 86th birthday. "Me living on borrowed time now." I hated that I was forced to educate myself on what to expect during the doctor's 6-week time frame, to learn the definitions of palliative care and hospice, that this wasn't just taking a break from treatment. There was the day we returned from the final visit to the oncologist. In the few seconds that my brother turned away to secure the front gate, I had continued ahead to unlock the house door. All of us too accustomed to Daddy's strong self-sufficiency. None of us imagined that he could no longer keep his balance walking down the sloping driveway, that gravity would pull him into an awkward trot, and that he'd pitch face first onto the pavement. The cut on his lower lip was small, but the skin immediately puffed up and bled profusely nonetheless. A scream almost escaped my lips, but I choked it back. That wasn't how our family dealt with things. How could Daddy still smile? One more time, as he started a slow, steady climb up the stairs to the 3rd floor. A few weeks later, I rattled around in the kitchen, wanting to whip up a delicious breakfast. "What would you like, Daddy?" "How about some coddled egg?" Coddled, I thought. Where are we, Downton Abbey? "I'm afraid I don't know how to make that," I admitted aloud. "I'll teach you." I often felt critical of my father, so precise, almost mechanical, fixed on the details. The more laid-back West Coast lifestyle I now claimed felt an ocean apart from the East Coast family I had left. But there I was, doing the best I could with those eggs. I messed up the timing, though, and my coddled crept the line over to poached. But we had a good laugh, and Daddy seemed so happy. He only ate a few bites, but I wasn't offended. That was the last time he was able to leave the bedroom. And this next excerpt is from a story I called The Trojan. Now, the events of this story, and these are all true stories, by the way, that's what I write. The events of this story took place in 1971. By the time I got to Bronx Science High School in the dawn of the 70s, I was sick of being square and dry as shredded wheat cereal. The world outside was changing. I pored over Life magazine with its in-depth articles and photos of hippies and free love in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco. Our parents were bemoaning the sexual revolution and women's lib movements, now in their 2nd decade. I wrote romantic yet chaste letters to an imaginary boyfriend, a soldier in Vietnam. But I was ready to break out for real. During my junior year, I was selected for a summer program at an Ivy League university. This would be a first for me, spending time away from my parents' house in New York. 8 weeks on a college campus, a 5. This would be my personal Woodstock. The programs at the university that summer ranged from high schoolers like me to graduate students. For the first time, I was around smart kids who were also hip. But this was also the first year that a few women would be admitted to a previously all-male college. And I wasn't prepared to be examined, oohed and awed over like a heifer at a county fair. Some nights we jammed at poetry slams, where the audience showed appreciation by finger snapping instead of hand clapping. Grown-up smells of real ground coffee beans and fumy cigarette smoke fought for my attention in this coffee shop / artist space. The place was so cool, wicker wrapped sangria bottles were repurposed as candle holders, adorning the tiny wooden tables. And the music. That summer birthed the most unforgettable music of my life. James Brown catcalling girls in hot pants. Carole King promising, "You've got a friend." And Marvin Gaye questioning the establishment with, "What's going on?" I dropped my Army Navy surplus attire for hot pants and sky-high platform shoes, perfect for the latest dance craze, named after a popular kids' toy, the Click Clack. About 2 weeks into the summer came my 16th birthday. There was a party going on, and suddenly I noticed the boy, and the boy noticed me.
Oh my God, that was so awesome, Ashton. Thank you so much for being here in Long Beach live tonight. Ashton and I have done events together over the last few years in the Pasadena Altamira area, and it's so great to have you, especially again here tonight, and again to more events that we can, be a part of together for the future. Awesome, no, seriously, because she's awesome, amazing. I just love her to death, really. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right, so some guys in the car that's not really wandering around. Anywho, the next person I'm gonna call up, I actually met him at the Cerritos Library back in June for a workshop that was hosted by Mike Sonskin. Some people here know who Mike Sonskin is. He actually read here back in April for the Trenches Full of Poets 1 year anniversary. And he was also a featured reader back in June of last year too, with Alex Petunia, Jonathan Humanoid. That was a fun night as well. And then I read for his open mic in Woodbury University last Tuesday. So yeah, amazing guy all around too. But anyways, I met Thomas Hewlett at Cerritos back in June, and I wanted to have him in something, and I'm glad Thomas is here to read for us tonight, and looking forward to it. So Thomas M. Hewlett grew up in Los Angeles and was raised on a steady diet of science fiction, fantasy, and all things mythic or paranormal. While he knew he wanted to be a writer at the age of 12, after college he strayed from the path and into drugs and alcohol addiction. It was at his lowest point that he rediscovered the power of writing and found the idea of his first novel, One Death at a Time, when a good friend suggested he write a story about vampires in AA. No, but that's so perfect because to this day you'll see some people that are in AA, because I kind of stumbled across one like last month at that is before a reading series, and that's kind of like their aesthetic, and it's that more. I should say it's like the gothic aesthetic, because the gothic aesthetic also fits like people that are into like that whole vampirism. So yeah. With the encouragement and support of his loving wife, he decided to combine his experiences of addiction/recovery with his love of modern fantasy and noir mystery. His second book is Darkness of the Spirit, was published in 2017. So please welcome to Page Against the Machine, Thomas M. Hewlett.
No gods, no masters. How do you restore your sanity in a system which induces mental illness? How do you restore your sanity in a system which is itself mentally ill? How do we define sanity and health and baseline functionality under a fractal reality in which sickness and madness at the top level is mirrored and repeated every level on down to the bottom? People who run this system rewrite reality to serve their own needs, raising citizens to be the codependent enablers of their every neurotic desire. Raised to be codependent is a clinically sanitized way of saying bred to be a slave. When you've grown up this way, lived your life in mental servitude to the needs of other people, and finally clawed your way to freedom, God bless America sounds more like a cruel joke than it does any type of patriotic rallying cry. By contrast, the old anarchist cry of no gods, no masters is not only an attractively practicable ethos, it's also the only remaining political ideology that makes any sense. In my own life, no gods, no masters has become a formula for harnessing the energy of a lifetime of sublimated rage and grief. Energy to reignite the power that was disabling my head all those years ago. Energy that was meant to fuel my resistance to the Cold War raging in my childhood home. A cracked mirror version of the one that burned across the world stage. A war in which rival superpowers fought proxy battles for control of the resource-rich terrain of my spirit. Pulled like puppets on the tangled strings of their own trauma, my parents stripped me of my voice and my identity in their colonization of my life. But as with any colonized people, though I lost the means of rebellion, the anger that flowed behind it only grew stronger. And because I couldn't release it at home, I learned to redirect it outwards, towards the increasingly heartless world of Reagan-era America. America was an easy and righteous target in the age of trickle-down cruelty, CIA-backed death squads, and a government that watched silently as a generation died of AIDS. But my political outlook, the world felt either or. You're either a brainwashed yuppie or a rebellious malcontent, a top 40 pop song or an underground indie, a Republican or a human being. I knew where to draw the lines, but I didn't know why I was drawing them. All I knew is that that spark of anger, that will to dissent, was the only thing keeping me alive. Reagan gave way to Bush the first, and I switched out the names in my anti-imperialist talking points because nothing else changed. And I continued to feel validated in my rejection of the false version of itself America presented to me. Then the 90s arrived, and the people around me cheered as the old guard was voted out, and a new era of hypocrisy blew in with an aw-shucks president who played the saxophone on late-night television and called me and my friends super predators at fundraisers. The boomer narcissist generation had taken control of the country and gaslit the voters into ignoring the conservative face behind the liberal mask. At a dinner party, one of my parents' friends laughed and told me, "We finally have a president our age," and then promptly stopped laughing when I said, "You're finally as old as the president." I still carried my anger, hardened now and beginning to crystallize into an imperfect diamond in my mind, as I desperately looked for something to plug it into. Out on my own in the world, it got more difficult to keep all that toxic energy pointed outwards, and finally, like any good trauma survivor, I aimed the red beam at my own forehead and fired all that frustration and confusion and shame straight through my skull. By the time Bush II stole his way into power and lied us all into a war, I had staged a panicked retreat on the front lines and embedded myself in an abusively familiar, safely unsafe marriage. Lost in the fog of war, the country and I drifted away from any recognizable sense of self, spiraling into a neurosis so deep that I woke up in a psych ward one morning with little idea of how I'd gotten there. Sitting on the edge of this life and the next, I'd apparently decided to stay here and keep fighting. As a counselor explained it to me at the time, I didn't actually want to kill myself, I just wanted to kill my old life. Over the next 12 years, I did my best to hold on while the country waded obliviously into enthusiastic dissociation and mania, as did my wife. I chased after her, of course, running deeper into the absurdity of her paranoid delusions, another dark mirror of the ever more unhinged national psyche. Sitting on a lower rung of hell one day, it dawned on me that saving her was never an option. I was neither equipped nor trained to rescue her from her own mind. And so I did the only thing I could do and save myself. I started the long walk back up to sanity, step after painful step, for 2 years before I saw the lights of the real world. In that clear light of reality, I made the amazing discovery that on the other side of trauma is revolution, an inner revolution to counter the outer totalitarian state of mind. Because like a nation, a person pushed to the breaking point will shatter into sharp, dangerous things. But the shards of your former life can be used to cut away the past and clear the space for an entirely new world. Free of the burden of my old anger and grief, if not the anger and grief themselves, I walked into the present moment alive and open for the first time, with a fiery desire for liberation. Because the purpose of freedom, as Toni Morrison taught us, is to free someone else. I found that my old anger at the forces of authority tied me to that authority. And once set free, I began to care more about helping the abused than fighting the abusers. The struggle now is to keep growing in a society that nurtures stagnation, to remain connected in a system that thrives on alienation from others and from self, to be alive in a world that desperately needs us to keep living. Because the world isn't dying. It's only the world's old life that is dying. Aspirationally fascist politicians litter the poisoned political landscape, and here in the States, a sizable percentage of the population is far too eager to roll back every right and freedom for women, for Black and brown folk, for the poor, and for anyone who refuses to conform to the violently simplistic blue is for boys, pink is for girls view of human expression. So I embrace this space of feeling, unencumbered for the first time ever by anyone else's definitions, ideologies, and party labels. I'm determined to act from and create out of this place of formless possibility. I don't look up to find my next target. I look around to find my next ally. And when I do, I listen. Liberals plead for reform. Leftists demand revolution. But I can still hear the voice of that socialist bodhisattva, Eugene P. Debs, reciting his vow of universal liberation. None of us are free until all of us are free. And maybe it's liberation itself that I've been chasing through the years. Maybe the truth is that we all deserve a better world, even my parents. A world free of trauma, a world free of suffering. I know that a better world is not a world free of pain. Pain is a tenured professor in the university of existence, but suffering is only an elective course. And it's that suffering that I dedicate myself to lifting from the shoulders of the people I meet, for their sake and for my own. If my past is to mean anything, I want it to mean something beautiful and useful. I want to transmute my nightmares into sweet dreams for the people of this collective consciousness. Maybe that's the real meaning of no gods, no masters. No gods but each other's humanity. No masters but our own human hearts. Thank you. That piece was inspired by a writer who writes Don't Sum Me Up. And once said that people who run this system are all narcissists and psychopaths. When you realize that, your own mental health starts to make a lot more sense. It's not us who are the problem. And that phrase, no gods, no masters, has been something that's been echoing in my mind the past couple of years, the further I go on my own healing journey. And as much as it pains my Gen X heart to use that phrase, that boomer hippie phrase, healing journey, that is what I'm on. And part of that journey is what inspired this next piece. I spent 2 months this year walking the Pacific Crest Trail, which if you don't know, the trail footpath that goes from the Mexican border to the Canadian border. It's like a million miles long, and I did the first 500 miles. And it's one of those things that's so big, you want to write about it, but you don't know how to get into it. And every time I sat down to try to start writing about it, I started writing about food, which is one of my favorite subjects. So I went with it, and because there's only three things endurance hikers think of, and that's food, water, and where to sleep. And we had a lot of rain this year, we had a lot of water, and pitching a tent in California is very easy, so food became like 99% of the things I thought about every day. It's called 500 Miles from Noodles. At mile 129, I dreamt about Pad See Ew. I woke up to the sound of rain patter on the roof of my tent and the taste of sweet basil on my tongue. I hadn't eaten that particular Thai dish since my marriage imploded, but I found that the further I walked alone on the twisting backbone of the Pacific Crest Trail, the more I thought about those late night missions to Thai town for plates of spicy noodles, steamed veggies and sauce, cold sweet cream tea, and gentle conversations about anything other than what we were talking about. Food fills in those talkative silences you find in unstable intimate relationships. It only amplifies the deafening silences you find in a one-person tent pitched at the bend of a trail somewhere along the California hills north of Big Bear. As I lay there in the rainy morning darkness, thinking of noodles and divorce, my stomach spoke up to say that I needed to get some breakfast in me before sunrise, so I could start chopping up the 16 miles between me and the evening campsite. It was not a happy reminder because my experiments with trail food had so far been miserably unsuccessful. I started the hike with lofty visions of minimalist, fuel-efficient eating that would cut down on carry weight and time spent cooking. I would cold soak grains, down room temperature instant coffee from water bottles, and round out my caloric count with Cliff Bars and energy gel packs. Freed from the ball and chain of camp stoves and fuel canisters, I would become a mile-leading machine, chugging along the trail like a bullet train. After 2 weeks of chewing on clumps of cold quinoa washed down with grainy lukewarm coffee, I calculated that meeting all of my nutritional needs had come at the expense of my will to live. The more chalky protein bars I swallowed, the more the memories of past meals dogged my steps and haunted my nights. Flat rice noodles with Chinese broccoli, navy corn, spiced beef, brown chicken and Thai basil and red peppers over jasmine rice with a fried egg. My whole body moaned at the thought of biting into a crispy shrimp cake lightly dipped in sweet chili sauce. Saved from the temptation to pitch myself over the side of the mountain by the advice of a veteran hiker. Delay any big decisions on trail until you've slept in a bed, had a shower, and eaten a real meal. I veered off trail into the town of Idlewild, mad with visions of soft buttery omelets, savory, juicy hamburgers, sharp cheddar cheese, and sweet fresh apples. Unfortunately, so did every other hiker coming in off the two-lane highway to that mountain oasis, and the lines outside the much trail-hike diners were long enough to push me further into town. Around the corner from the crowded locals' favorite brunch spot, what did I find but a humble ramen house? I was the first customer of the day and took a seat on the small patio to save the staff from the odor of a few weeks on trail while I looked over the menu. On the front was an offering of ramens, soba noodles, and curry rice. But when I flipped it over, my stomach growled as I read the magic word, kimchi. Sacred kimchi, life-giving kimchi. On the way to return, I handed him out the menu and ordered bulgogi with steamed rice. He brought me a small spread of banchan and a tiny bowl of kimchi. I asked him if I could have more, and he disappeared without saying anything. But it was the chef himself who came back with the kimchi to tell me that I could have as much as I wanted. He only served it in small bowls, he said, because the people who came to his restaurant never ate it. Still somewhat delirious from the hike, I shook my head and told him that was insane because kimchi is life. He smiled wide and brought me a heaping portion of the softly crunchy, tangy spiced red chili cabbage, which I'd savored on my tongue for more than the grilled meat. My wife kept our cat, but left me kimchi. With a belly full of real food and a night of rest on something other than rocks, I humbly resolved to abandon my ill-conceived, cold-soaked nightmare diet in favor of the standard hiker fare. I restocked in town and hiked out with a backpack stuffed with peanut butter, tortillas, instant rice, instant oatmeal, dry-packed tuna, dehydrated mashed potatoes, and yes, a goddamn camp stove and a fuel canister. For the next few weeks, I heated water in the morning for oats and coffee, walked 8 miles, stopped to eat cold tortillas and peanut butter, walked another 8 miles, and feasted on a tidy pot of instant tuna mush. While dining on hot food in the chilly mountain air was certainly more enjoyable, the food tasted the way an Ayn Rand novel would taste if you could eat it. On the backside of San Jacinto, I stopped at a watering hole for the midday meal and lunched with a small group of hikers from the East Coast. We all broke out our tortillas and peanut butter and had the inevitable conversation about where everyone was from. And as I talked about Los Angeles, that cold tortilla turned to cardboard in my mouth, and I heard the voices of 1,000 taqueros cursing my name for the abomination in my hand. Cold tortillas with peanut butter? How could I betray my LA heritage like this? As I swallowed the last bit of dry, hard-pressed flour, I thought of carne asada. Raised by fundamentalist vegetarians, my wife rarely ate meat and met her. But dining with me, she came to appreciate the culinary uniqueness of a city where you can get breakfast burritos, pho thai, and shrimp fried rice in the same block. Finding cheap, funky, no-frills little restaurants was one thing we always enjoyed doing together, and many an argument ended in a détente across a greasy table full of paper-wrapped street food. When I headed back to trail after that fateful lunch, I decided to ditch the hiker food and find a way to eat whatever the hell I wanted to eat. Just because dehydrated enchiladas weren't actually a thing that existed didn't mean I couldn't cobble together a diet that I look forward to eating every morning. But hikers plan and the trail lasts. By the time I descended into Whitewater Crossing, the nausea I'd been feeling got worse, as did my exhaustion and dizziness. I couldn't keep food down or walk more than a couple miles without resting. I'd contracted altitude sickness. And with no other way out of that canyon, I was facing a 5,000-foot climb to the next resupply. It took me 3 days. 3 days I spent dry heaving, barely sleeping, and subsisting on nothing but water and electrolytes. When I got to Big Bear, I found a hostel and slept for 2 days. On the third day, I shuffled down the street to the nearest convenience store and picked through their meager supplies for garlic, cayenne flakes, and tomatoes to make what turned out to be the tastiest pot of penne arrabbiata I'd ever prepared. The other hikers standing there, who'd been eating at local burger joints for 3 days, were amazed at what I accomplished in that tiny corner kitchen. But for me, after what I'd been through, cooking something simple for myself and my poor body was a natural response. I ate that evening by the patio window, watching rain fall on the fir and pine trees around the lake, and thought of that day years ago when Nancy taught me how to make kimchi jjigae. It took me 3 tries to master this simple dish, mostly because the correct amount of red pepper paste is an entirely subjective measurement. But on that last and final pot, she dipped her spoon into the stew and came up smiling at me, and we laughed. We laughed and ate, and it was this light memory I held to offset the weight of the heavy ones as I sat by that window, eating my noodles, so many miles away from heartbreak, so many miles away from her, but so many miles closer to myself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. I've never hiked more than a day, so I can just go home and then eat dinner and when I'm done and sleep in my own nice comfy bed. Anyway, our next reader is Loretta McCormick, and this is actually her first reading since the pandemic, so this is good to finally hear her again. And I met her years ago. I forget. Where? 90 by 90. Okay, 90 by 90. Yeah, everything before the pandemic is like I don't remember anything. But yeah. And then I remember we hung out at AWP in Portland, and that was fun. And Loretta McCormick is a Southern California native. She obtained her PhD from the University of Wisconsin. While there, she was editor-in-chief of the nationally renowned literary journal, Cream City Review. She's been published in Cultural Daily, Betwixt, and among others. If you've ever seen the ambulances with McCormick written on the side, that's their family business.
Oh.
Please welcome Loretta McCormick.
It's actually my cousins who run the ambulances. My family, they're all morticians. So everyone but me. I just write about it. This is called Empire Builders. It's an excerpt. The full story is going to be published in Minnesota Review, I think in October.
Ooh, nice.
The first time our father helped embalm a body, he was ferried to the funeral home in an angry 45-minute drive from Manhattan Beach into Los Angeles with his old man. Getting into the old man's black Cadillac Fleetwood with its blood red leather interior had always felt like opening up the thorax of a giant shining insect and nestling between its organs. "You're still doing the singing thing?" the old man asked as he drove our father to the school earlier that year. "Everyone has to take an elective," our father said. "Well, why not play a sport or learn Latin and do something useful?" "Latin is useful?" our father asked under his breath and picked at a loose thread at his cuff. "What the hell did you just say to me?" The old man's knuckles went white as he gripped the steering wheel. "Nothing. I was just making a joke." Our father would never have thought to talk back before. His new height and hormones coursing through him made him brave. Even so, he regretted the momentary loss of control. "Well, are you going to answer me or sit there with your thumb up your ass?" the old man asked. "I need to keep up my GPA. It requires an easy A," he said, trying to keep any note of defensive pleading out. The old man didn't mind that our father was a mediocre student as long as he didn't get in trouble or his grades didn't dip so low that the school had cause to kick him out. He reveled in the school's golden-crested navy suit and red tie uniforms, its iron-gated brick grounds that had been built 50 years earlier, predicting the desire of well-heeled parents to keep the creep of the city away from their golden boys. He thought the exorbitant tuition checks might erase the stigma of the dirty work of undertaking. But the old man would have slapped the music right out of his son's head if he'd known our father spend his time in and out of class daydreaming himself in the sunny summertime Beach Boy harmonies. "If you want to make an asshole out of yourself, that's your choice," the old man said. He started hacking as he rolled down the window and spat out a gob of mucus before lighting a cigarette. Our father unclenched his jaw and sank into his daydreams for the rest of the ride. In his dreams, he was grown and so were his brothers. They were shaggy-haired in matching short sleeves, striped button-ups, and slender white slacks. Their voices fit together like a jigsaw puzzle of an orange ocean sunset as they crooned to a sandy, bikini-clad audience. By the time our father was 14, his speaking voice had cracked into a smooth baritone, yet he insisted on singing in a strained falsetto that infuriated his music teacher. The young teacher, who'd done everything from giving guitar lessons to waiting tables to put himself through school, had graduated with a master's degree in music only a year earlier. During class, he stood in front of a music stand and stewed over the way entitled rows of teenage boys stared down at him from curved risers with apathy or condescension. Our father seemed to mock him with that high, plaintive voice. It rang in the teacher's ears, turning them livid red. Why did you choose this elective, Mr. McCaffrey? I mean, other than to avoid taking Latin with Father Dominic, he asked our father after class one day. Our father scuffed his foot against the floor and scanned the windows as if searching for an escape route. His teacher misunderstood our father's nervousness as a challenge and made a show of swiping the chalkboard in angry strokes and scraping chairs into place. Do you play an instrument? He finally asked. We have a piano at home. The teacher stopped shuffling his grade book and sheet music into a leather satchel and motioned to the slightly battered upright piano. Our father tentatively took a seat on the bench. Can you play something? His teacher asked. Our father couldn't think of one thing to play, so he started playing everything he knew. He began with the Southern California radio favorites, then the hymns they'd been learning in class, before moving into the beginning of his mother's favorite Eric Satie record, the one she sometimes played when she folded huge piles of laundry on the couch. It began to dawn on the teacher that our father's slouching awkwardness wasn't insolence after all. He rested a hand on our father's arm, stilling the music. How long have you taken lessons? Actually, our piano isn't really for playing, he said. Esther kept the baby grand displayed in the back corner of the formal living room, a space rarely used. Every month, a man came to tune it, and every week she wiped it down with a rag and lemon-scented pledge. When she opened the curtains to the window overlooking the street, anyone walking by could see Esther's lonely diorama of a tuxedo piano, a tasteful white runner across its gleaming lid, and a crystal vase of dusty red paper roses in the center like a boutonniere. Convincing the old man to buy it for her had been surprisingly easy. She had mentioned several times how lovely a piano would look in the window, elegant and tasteful. She told her sons how much everyone in the house used to love it when her own mother would play the piano after church. The old man smirked, but didn't force her to admit that her mother could barely play, or that there was nothing elegant about her old player piano that belted out tinny, uneven saloon tunes, jarring everyone out of the lethargic joy of a full belly. And then one day, 3 men showed up to the house in a delivery truck and carried in the glossy black instrument. Esther fussed over their dirty boots on her carpet, but ushered them to the spot where it would be best seen from both sidewalk and as soon as anyone walked in the front door. Should I ask someone from the church about lessons for the boys? Esther asked the old man when he came home from work that night. Waste of money. They'll quit before I even finish paying it off. The piano might have been more about making sure everyone knew she had one, but she was incensed at the ingratiating tone his music teacher had sent home with her father. The way he asked that she foster her son's talent and thanked her for acknowledging the importance of art education for our youth. She grudgingly told her son that he could practice every day if he wanted, as long as he did it in his school uniform with the curtains wide open so that all the neighbors would see how talented her son was. Near the end of the school year, the Beach Boys released Pet Sounds. Our father bought it the first day it came out. But these songs did not take the shape of an orange ocean sunset in his head like all their other albums had. These were not his sunset harmony piano daydreams. These songs were strange, immense, and made him feel as if he were drowning just a little. When the sound of the train began to thunder through the end of the album, he stopped the record. It felt like the end of something. The day school let out for summer, the old man made an announcement at dinner. He would be taking our father to work the next morning. There was no discussion, no fight. It was just time. The old man was an undertaker, as was his father and his father's father, and so on, all the way back to Ireland. Or that was the story, at least. His mother set down her fork and stared at the old man from across the silence. He'll just be answering the phone, the old man lied. Of course, our father had seen dead bodies before. The old man worked plenty of nights. And when he did, no matter how much Esther hated it, she was often forced to rush out before the sun went down to bring her husband a clean shirt or a lukewarm dinner plate, children in tow. To impress his classmates, it wasn't unheard of for our father to enhance a story or two. Add a strange sound, a door slamming in the distance, a whisper from beyond. On his first day driving to work with the old man, he burrowed into the red leather, anticipating the stories he'd have for them by the end of the summer. But the truth was that the mortuary was far from the remote or frightening house of horrors his friends thought it to be. From the two-story building, gleaming white with its row of porticos topped by pediments, was pure theater. It was front stage. Black suits, polished shoes, cool-toned walls, mahogany furniture, plush carpet runners that absorbed every footstep, and the barely there, icy sweet scent of carnations. It was the drama of tears and low tones and subtle gestures. Backstage, it was the old man and his uncles in their cloud of smoke and aquabella. It was burnt coffee and foul language and paperwork. And something else he'd only caught a glimpse of behind the swinging door of the prep room. Upstairs backstage, his uncles sat around a battered dining room table smoking in silence. They were both in undershirts, hiding their suit jackets and ties in the back closet to keep them from the cigarette stink. Laurel, hardly get off your asses and help get my boy ready for work. The old man, oldest brother, just like our fathers, refused to call his brothers by their actual names, calling one Hardly instead of Hardy, telling him he hardly did anything, telling him he was hardly a man. The old man retreated to his office. Sitting at the table in a black suit with his uncles, our father felt like a man. He liked them, even though they'd never spent much time together. They did resemble the comedy duo, one skinny and silly, the other big and bullish. They were unmarried and crass, but playful and slow to get angry. Our father used to wonder why they were never invited to Christmas or Easter dinner. It wasn't until he'd started working that he realized it was Esther who didn't like having them over. They kept their dirty jokes out of the house and always brought her a box of chocolates, but she couldn't take 3 of them, so similar in looks and mannerisms, sitting at her table at once. Uncle Hardly got up and poured our father a cup of coffee. Laurel had already pulled a cigarette from the pack on the table and held it out to our father. I'm 15. Laurel shrugged and lit it for himself. Hardly placed his big meaty hand on her father's shoulder and gave a squeeze. It was warm, almost tender, but our father began to sweat. Tell me, my boy, Hardly said, gently shaking his shoulder as if he were waking him from a nap. Are you an undertaker? Our father didn't know how to answer. Isn't that what we do? He finally asked. After a moment of smoking and silence, Hardly finally said, no, I'm talking about who you are, not what you do, son. The old man had never called him son as if it were an endearment before, something special and almost private. How would he even know yet, eh? Laurel asked. You will, Hardly said. He squeezed our father's shoulder once more and leaned back in his chair, exposing several cigarette burns on his undershirt. We bury the dead. We burn them and preserve them. We clean them up and make them look nice for families. We plan the whole thing. That's what we do. But an undertaker. He paused and reached for another cigarette from the pack near the ashtray. An undertaker performs a corporal work of mercy. He has a calling. Uncle Laurel slid a Zippo across the table, nodding, and Hardly lit it up with a smart snap. So what do you think? I think so, yeah. Our father nodded. I'm sure I am, or will be. He wasn't sure exactly what he was confirming, but whatever it was, his uncle seemed pleased. This, for now, was good enough for him. The old man emerged from his office. You're with Hardly today, he said. Uncle hardly left the cigarette burning in the ashtray, struggled out of his chair and motioned for our father to follow him. It's your holy moment, your induction, he said as our father followed him downstairs to the prep room. The boy was 16. He drowned in the ocean sometime during the night after his friends had passed out around a bonfire. They didn't call for help right away, thinking he might have left early. But as his friends were sobering up and gathering their things, someone noticed the wet lump of his t-shirt like a mound of kelp at the shoreline and one of his sandals being pulled into the water. Uncle Laurel had picked the body up from the coroner's office earlier that morning, and it was laid out on a bier in the prep room draped in a white sheet. As Hartley showed him how to put on the rubbery black apron and gloves, our father still expected the boy to be wearing a bathing suit, his hair to be sandy and wet, a piece of slimy kelp still clinging to his shoulder. When his uncle pulled back the sheet, our father found the body's reddish shriveled penis resting in dark pubic hair far more jarring than the Y-shaped incision spanning its torso, held together with jagged ragdoll stitches. It had a starkly perfect tan line at its waist, golden upper body, milky hips and upper thighs, a light smattering of acne at the jaw and freckles across the bridge of its slightly sunburned nose. He bit his nails, our father said, pointing to where they were chewed to the quick. So fucking what, kids? Stay focused, Hartley said, beginning to remove the coroner's stitches. There were more stitches hidden in its lush dark hair, and when Hartley removed them and pulled back the scalp, its perfect face crumpled like a cheap rubber Halloween mask. All the while, our father stood next to the bier in a ridiculous apron and gloves too big for him. Hartley kept up a smooth, unemotional narrative as he performed his tasks, removed its skull cap and shook sawdust into the empty cavity of its head. The sawdust is treated with formaldehyde, he said. It's also got a hardening compound, keeps things as dry as possible. You don't want it to start leaking during an open casket. He pulled out a bag of organs the coroner had placed into its chest before sewing it back up. And he set the bag in a bucket and poured pink embalming fluid over it. He treated the skin, especially the nose, with preservative, rubbing it across the bridge and into the tip like lotion to keep it from turning black. What our father felt most as he watched his uncle work was envy for this dead boy. His days in the sun, his casual public school clothes, his surfing lessons. Envy burned through him. You have an aptitude for this, son, Uncle Hartley said, impressed with his stoicism. Our father was quiet, but not too quiet the rest of the day. He ate lunch with his uncles, laughed at their jokes, tried to smoke a cigarette and threw up in the kitchen sink, and at the end of the day, he drove home with the old man. How was your day? His mother asked from the kitchen. Fine. He didn't tell Esther about the swearing, the smoking, or the dead boy, but after he changed his clothes before he went down for dinner, our father took the Pet Sounds album off his shelf and out of its sleeve and smashed it on the edge of his dresser.
Thank you, Loretta. That last image will stay with me, yeah. I mean, really the only essay I've ever written about my family is about my great grandmother that like 20 times I got rejected, so I put it away and it's still sitting there. But yeah, it's nothing about anybody who's still alive or I knew it because she died when I was 12 or 13 and 106 in 2017 or something. So yeah, that was it. So yeah, it kind of reminded me of just writing about family. But yeah, that last image. Yeah, that's the strongest thing I found in the whole piece. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, it's good to finally get out again since the beginning of last month when I got COVID for a week, and then I haven't been anywhere since. So yeah, that was unexpected because I hadn't been going too far anywhere. Just like maybe one of the last events was coming here before I got sick. So and hosting here. So yeah, it's good to be back and our last reader, but still pretty powerful, a little bit Salas. And the last time she read and she got out was here for Trenches Full of Poets earlier this year. So it's good to have her come back and hear prose instead. So Elisabet Salas is a Mexican-American writer who lives in Paris, California, where she lives with her family and dog. When she's not working on various poems and novels, she's up all night reading or marathoning a new TV show while consuming her weight in coffee and French fries. She's currently working towards a degree from Arizona State Online. Salas is the author of the short story collection Trinity, the poetry collection The Chaos Inside Me, and in 2021, the book A Portrait of Sunflowers. Please welcome Elisabet.
Hello, thank you for closing it out so daunting after such wonderful work. I'm going to be reading from my short stories. The second one, which was the first one I wrote, called The Room. White and gray are all I know. The white walls, the gray floor, the white door, the gray ceiling with the one fluorescent light that acts like my sun. I don't know how long I've been here. 3 weeks, 3 years, 3 decades. I spend so much time asleep, tracking days is an impossibility. Time is an illusion. Time means nothing. I have no windows, no real light, no breeze. My life is stale. My meals never come when I am awake. And when they do, they taste like I imagine dirt tastes. The last time I heard something other than myself was long ago, or was it yesterday? I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm never awake when I should be. Sometimes my mind wanders and asks if I'm even human. Do you have to be seen to be real? Don't you have to be spoken to and speak to? And to be held to be human? Surely there are guidelines and boxes to tick off, right? Right. I think. I don't remember. I am alive. I am a living thing. This much I know. My heart is beating inside my chest. I can feel the pulse of it in my head and in my toes. I can feel the air whistle inside my nose, ragged inside of my mouth. I am a living thing, but am I human? Can't remember. I am going mad. They say I was mad and they threw me inside this room. This room. This room is all I know. Who was I before this? Who was I before this nothingness? The brightness of the room is all I can recall. It is all I know. It is all that exists in this room with me. And the lights never go off. Never offer me the peace of darkness. Never, never, never. Peace is fleeting, fleeting, always out of my reach, like flashes of lightning in the sky, haunting me with the promise of change. Am I bad? Is that why I am here? I have asked myself the same question a million different ways, and I still can find no answer. I wonder if I am real. If I spoke, would I hear myself? What if I cannot? What if nothing comes out? I don't speak for fear of not hearing myself and realizing I am nothing. I think about that riddle with the tree. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Will I make a sound? I think I've forgotten how to speak. I'm never awake when I should be. Never awake when they open the hatchet to my cell and shove food in or take me and deposit me back. I am never awake. Yet bruises mar my skin. Perhaps they're for needles, or maybe someone's hands, I don't know. I wish there was feeling of someone else's breath on my skin, the feeling of someone else's heat. I wish I remembered the feeling of their touch, even if it was only pain I remembered. Do they do it on purpose, or am I a heavy sleeper? I can't remember. I wonder if I'll die here. Will they let me die here? Do they even care? Do they even care? Do they remember? I feel like I am buried and forgotten already. Perhaps I am a seed. Perhaps I will outgrow this place and be born again. Or perhaps I am already dead and this is hell. It's quiet for hell, but just as bright as I've imagined. Am I wicked? Is this my punishment? Punishment for the smell of charred flesh that teases my spine. Punishment for the fire and smoke I feel in my bones. Punishment. I find my thoughts running in circles, infinite loops, or is it finite? Because I always end up in the same place. This is madness. I am madness. I can feel the ache of my shoulders, the pain in my chest from my position on this lumpy excuse for a bed. I face one of the white walls. That's not the white wall with the white door. On the side, my eyes closed, and all I see is brightness. I hold this pain close like an old friend. It grounds me, reminds me that maybe, just maybe, this is real. But I am real. I suck in a stale breath that probably smells and tastes like me. I'm probably breathing in the skin that died and fell off. I am, in essence, a cannibal. I almost grin at the thought. If I am a cannibal, I am human, and I am alive. So that's the short excerpt from. Not too much to ask, but a small piece I'm writing for my next book. It's called I Am a Sinner. I've always wondered if I was broken, if my prayers weren't answered because something was wrong with me. If I was a sinner unworthy of saving. I wonder if God turns a blind eye towards me because of some personal flaw. But the church did not seem to think so. They said God was not cruel, he was just. That this was all just. My suffering was a lie, a farce made up for attention. It was all in my head, they said. It was all a test of my faith. Was I being punished? The question plagued me. I scored my brain for a reason or an explanation, but none came. The church offered no answers of their own. So I began to pray, like they said I should. I prayed until my knees became swollen and my eyes shut with tears, and yet no deliverance to my pleas came. No relief from the pain, no balm to soothe the distress my mind was drowning in. No prayer helped, no confession rid me of this burden. I was only left confused as to where the Savior that I was promised was. When my prayer failed, I sought help again, but none came. They said there was a virtue in my pain, that there was a righteousness in struggling against the evil inside of me. A fight against the devil himself was taking place within me. Divine violence, a glorious burden. I was shamed for questioning his plan for me when the pain did not stop. I was silenced and told to kneel again, to crawl and beg this God, this tyrant that let the pain swim inside me, because that was his plan for me. Those men drilled the story into me, etched the writing of their Bible into my skin, branding my soul, letting the guilt rot me from the inside. I grew to hate myself in the midst of the pain and the guilt. I grew to hate this useless body that seemed to be broken and riddled with faults. I grew to hate the weakness in my soul for not being able to withstand the test. The pilgrimage he laid before me for not being faithful. And I grew to crave nothing. I grew to crave death and the peace it brought. It was wrong of me, wasn't it? It was wrong to work to an end to things on my own terms. It was another sin to add to my time. There was no outcome where I did not suffer, was not at fault, was not the villain. There was no outcome where I did not lose. I was shackled, pinned to my own cross, begging for a salvation that would not come, damned to hell by the very thing that was supposed to save me. I tore myself apart trying to be good, trying to be faithful, praying and begging for forgiveness. I hatched at myself, mutilated my body, etched pain into flesh to repent for my sins. But faith did not save me. God did not save me. Religion did not save me. I had to unshackle my soul from their damnation, had to forsake their truths or risk a guilty death. I became the sinner they named me, I did become godless, faithless, free. Turn it over to you, Brian.
Well, thank all of you for coming out here, and thank all of you for reading. And yeah, that sounds like your next book is going to be really powerful and really amazing. And yeah, that gets me thinking about all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I'll turn.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted
You
to
got
get you know, but yes, yeah, please do turn it over to you guys.
Yeah, but before that, I'll just say, yeah, my website is losangelosliterature.com. It's an online publication, as Jesse said, covering the whole like LA area literary community, the 4 or 5 counties, and just read it, be informed, and submissions are always open. So just go to the submission page and see what you can submit or what the 5 categories I have, from articles, book reviews, interviews, literary history, and literary criticism. So it's for everybody in the community and everybody in Southern California that loves literature. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So for those that want to come back to Pages of the Machine sooner than later, this Saturday, and we were talking about this earlier, one person that's going to be reading this Saturday, and Loretta knows of him through Andrew. You know of him, I think, and you're barely hearing of him. But anyways, this Saturday, what's happening here is Pages of the Machine presents a live disorder post Labor Day celebration of working class poetry featuring Fred Voss. That's not who who I'm referring to because I don't really know too much about Fred Boss, but I do know who the other person is. Bill Moore. He is professor at Cal State Long Beach for poetry in an MFA program that's going on over there. Andrew has taken classes with him, and I'm sure Olga Maria, who read here for the first French School of Prose, has seen him and talked to him and stuff.
He goes back like to the early 70s or something.
Yeah.
Stuff and having a lot to do with John Baroque and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. So that's happening this Saturday, September 16th at 6 p.m. here at Patience the Machine. So if you guys are able to, please come on out for that. That's going to be an amazing, amazing reading. And Bill Moore, I've read his stuff before, actually, like glimpses, and it's great. It's really great. So if you can, please come out here and check him out. And Fred Boss too. I'm sure he's amazing too. And then also, second Thursday, October, Trenches Full of Poets. That is an open mic that happens after the features read, and Nikolai is the host, and so is Marissa Moreno. And Nikolai, who is going to be reading for October, the second Thursday? Kwamel. So Kwamel is the host of Under My Influence, who I actually read for that open mic, and so did Elisabet Koyman, who's in the audience, and so did Ron Dowell, who's in the audience on Labor Day. That was actually a very fun night at Long Beach Unified. For a couple of months, I was thinking Long Beach Unified was the actual Long Beach Unified School District, and they were just having like a special event for poetry in the school district office. That's what I legit thought until I found out that it's a bar, a theme bar, that has some pretty amazing gin and juice, by the way. Yeah, with deep fruit puree, and I know Brent in there.
On their front entrance, they have like the list of all these like famous like people that have graduated from there and stuff because the owners had gone to I think it was Long Beach Poly or something, so they have all their graduates there and stuff.
So if you guys do get a chance to go to that, please do go to that open mic. There's actually another open mic happening this upcoming third Monday. Doors open at 7 p.m. and the show officially starts at 8-ish. So please get there at 7-ish to sign up before I got a ride back to Diamond Bar before some bullshit happened with me. But anywho. But anyways, so yeah, next Monday, please go to Under My Influence. Kwamel's amazing, dope poet. Oh my God, if you've never heard Kwamel read, awesome poet. And yes, Elizabeth?
It's first and third Monday.
Yeah, and also first and third Monday. So yeah, after the third Monday, please, if you can't come to the third Monday, go to the first Monday of October at Long Beach Unified. It's just up the street on Anaheim, at Anaheim Boulevard or something like that. Yeah, it's just basically up the street from here, really. And then yeah, you'll have an amazing time. Seriously, amazing time with beer and gin and juice. And then what else is going on? This Saturday, if you do want to go to an open mic, but it is in my area, in Arcadia, there is an open mic happening that I'm involved in at a yogurt shop / juicery called Truly Fresh J. And the open mic is going to be like around 4-ish p.m. And that's because at 3 p.m. there's like a Four Feathers Press showcase happening with Alicia Espirit. I always mix up her last name. Alicia Esper. Do you know what I'm talking about, Elisabeth? No?
Yeah, I recognize the name, but no, I don't remember how to pronounce it now.
The other feature for this Saturday is Lynn Bronstein, who is an amazing poet in the SoCal scene, has read at Beyond Baroque so many times. Jackie Chow is also going to be reading, who we all know, well, some of us know, and she was recently published in the Nervous Ghost Press's Waiting Room Anthology. And then, of course, the founder of Four Feathers Press, Don Kingfisher Campbell, is also going to be reading. So, yeah, if you want to come out for that, that's going to happen at 3 p.m. You can get some, Vietnamese coffee or orange mango smoothie or rolled ice cream that they roll, on this, flat, cold pan. It's really good, yeah. It's over in Arcadia, in the Arcadia-Monrovia border on Huntington and Fifth Avenue. And it's near Red Lobster, a Raising Cane's, a Fat Burger. There's a DoubleTree. Yeah. So if you want to come up for that, please do. And then also, again, since Nikolai does host Trench Full of Poets and Mauricio, Nikolai and I are actually going to be reading in Sacramento in early October on the first weekend. And that I'm looking forward to because I did mention earlier today about Chills of Wood podcast, and that's who I am helping out for this event. And it's this year's going to be in Sacramento at the Sacramento Poetry Center for night 1 on October 6th at 6 p.m. And then the second night it will be at the North Natimus Library in northern Sacramento, also at 6 p.m. So I'm so looking forward to that. I think it's gonna be fun. I'm sure Nikolai and I are gonna have a good time over there, along with some other readers that are gonna be reading tomorrow. Actually, one of them that's a part of that lineup is gonna be reading tomorrow. If you want to catch that person at Beyond Baroque, which we've been talking about a lot tonight. Beyond Baroque in Venice. Tomorrow is a reading there that's happening with Hector Son Hector, Minerva Reynosa, and then one other person that I can't recall, and they're going to have a Q&A, but Hector is also another person that is going to be reading for that Voices of California reading in Sacramento in October. So there's a lot going on, whether it's in SoCal or NorCal, that's like 6+ hours away. It's always fun to go to these events if you can, or like again, even like as I mentioned earlier with Long Beach, with the Long Beach Unified, do come out for that if you can. It's a fun time. Yeah, you will not be disappointed. Is there anything else you want to add before I close out?
I guess, well, I guess the big thing this weekend is another Beyond Baroque event where they're celebrating the life and legacy of Harry Northup, who's been around here maybe since the 60s, and he's a poet and actor, and everybody is like historically, and poets in LA are coming out for that one, like yeah,
Just a minute, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and a whole bunch of people like Michael C. Ford, who's been in the community since like the 60s, and so like Mike Thompson's gonna be reading there, and like Cam Ward's gonna be there, and a bunch of other people. But yeah, Saturday from like it's got and James Cushing's gonna be there, and like and the man who actually founded and started Beyond Baroque is gonna be there, George Jerry Smith, to read and celebrate his life and legacy, and yeah. That's just another one of the events, yeah. And there's tons and tons of like independent bookstores in Southern California, but the catch is that like they're kind of just it's spread out as we all are and we live and stuff. So they're like, if there's like 35 or 40, like one's on my side of town and one's in every section, so we have to go there. So it still feels like there's not enough. So check them out and see what's going on.
Definitely. So that does conclude the Trenches Full of Prose for September 2023. Thank you all so much for being here in the live audience. We really appreciate you all for seeing Ashton, Thomas, Loretta, and Elisabet. And thank you again, Brian. And we're going to go ahead and close out. Thank you so much.